Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming and Miniature video. In today's video, we're continuing on with our Mortem et Gloriam boot camp. And in today's video, we're going to be focusing on Chapter 4, an overview of MeG. So this is just a high-end overview. This video should be fairly quick, and then this will probably be the last video where you see my ugly mug, because going forward I'm going to want a top-down camera view where you can see miniatures being moved and army lists and things like that. So, but with the overview, let's go ahead and dig into it. In these videos, what you'll see is I'll be going over chapter by chapter through the rules, explaining the rules, but also learning the rules as we go along. Okay, so chapter 4, an overview of MeG. Nobody gets out unscathed. This chapter gives you a very quick preview of the essence of MeG. By the end of this section, you'll have a sense of what it's all about and the role of the death dice and cards discs in the game. Okay, so we'll be looking at the dice, we'll be looking at the cards, etc. But not really understanding the nuances. Remember, this is just an overview. Okay, playing at being a general. MeG, Mortem et Gloriam, is a war game where you take charge of an army from the ancient world. We knew this. The period is loosely defined as an age before gunpowder and firearms. Well, not really, because some of the late war army lists do have handgunners and bombards. Okay. It's loosely defined as the age before gunpowder. So roughly ending around 1500 in Western Europe, but nearer 1580 in other distant areas. I'm not sure what they mean by that, but okay. You lead an army of about 10 to 20 units, created from bases of painted miniatures, moving them on a table with terrain that represents a battlefield. Okay, everybody understands that. Everybody here that's watching this video has probably played a miniatures game in the past. You are the army commander, and with your subordinate generals, you control your army in an attempt to smash your opponent. Okay, you can play as Alexander the Great with his famous subordinates Parmenio and Ptolemy, or Hannibal of Carthage with his famous generals of Hasdrubal and Hanno, or Vercingetorix the Gaul with the leaders of the Gallic tribes, or Genghis Khan with his Mongols. The choice is yours. Okay, so basically they're just saying there's a ton of different armies you can choose from. Variety is the spice of life. The figures represent the different types of troops that make up your chosen army. They can be Macedonian, Gallic, Teutonic. The armies of the ancient era varied enormously, from Roman armies with their solid legions set up around a fortified camp to nomadic steppe armies with swarms of horse warriors foraging the land with no camp at all. So variety is one of the great things in the ancient wargaming. There's over 650 army lists, more than any other set previously. Yeah, it even says here, you can play from the ancient Egyptians of Ramses to the cannon-carrying wagons of the Hussites. Okay, even more importantly, it has the characteristic to make Huns feel like Huns and Romans feel like Romans. When you play as Attila, you will find the tactics that worked historically for him will work on your tabletop. When you play as the Romans, you will need to force the issue with your legions. As army character is strong in MeG and the points are well balanced, you may as well use what takes your fancy from history. Played well, it can win. Okay, so let's talk about an army in Mortem Glorin. An army is made up of sets of bases representing the army. We don't use the term unit going forward, and it is imprecise and means many different things. Most commonly, a unit is thought of as what a soldier feels they belong to, the 10th Legion or the 2nd Para. We want to look at the army from a point of view of the top generals and the army as seen from their command perspective. We use the term unit group, or UG for short, UG, UG for short, for precision. Historical, instead of battle group, they're using unit group. Means the same thing. Historical armies were they just want to be different. Okay, historical armies were commanded this way. Troops tended to be grouped together in fairly large blocks of a few thousand men under a junior general. In some armies, this may be what is commonly thought of as a unit. In others, several of them grouped together. A unit group is a group of bases that represent one battle group. And multiple battle groups can be together, but that's still, like, if two battle groups are together, that's still two unit groups. Okay. For example, a phalanx consisting of a lineup of several units called syntagma, which was 16 files, each 16 soldiers deep, for a total of 256. Each syntagma was commanded by a junior officer, but this is way too small for our perspective. A phalanx unit group in MeG will be 5 to 10 of these grouped together under a senior officer. And the whole phalanx making up a center of an army might be 3 to 5 of these UGs. So you will find the same if you look at Gauls, where two tribes of war bands might be merged to work together under a senior tribal leader, and so on. So more accurately, an UG is the command of a senior officer. More accurately, an UG is the command of a senior officer one level below the 2 to 4 generals we represent explicitly on the tabletop. So it's a hidden commander. So let's say I've got a Roman legion here and a Roman legion there, and I put them together. That is a group that is commanded by a general that's inside that unit group. They don't, you don't actually see it on the table. And then I might have a separate general. As we use command for the troops under our 2 to 4 generals, we came up with something else as it works. Adding a senior officer figure to an UG is a nice touch as well as realistic. So, like my Roman units that I put together, in the front base, one of the two front bases, I have an officer with a standard and a musician to represent that senior officer, but it doesn't really affect anything. It's just for looks. There are two types of unit groups. There are tactical unit groups, or TUGs, which I always thought was funny, and that's main battle troops. And then there's the second one, which is skirmish unit groups, or SUGs. And SUGs are like light troops, like velites. So there's 3 game variants we've already gone over. We got the Maximus, where a tug is usually 6 to 9 bases. Cavalry tug is 4 to 6 bases, and they have a frontage of 2, 3, or 4 bases. In Magna, we reduce them down, so the infantry tug is 4 to 6 bases, and cavalry is 2 to 4 bases. And they have a frontage of 2 to 3. In Pacto, we reduce the tug to a single file of bases 1 to 3 bases deep, depending on type. Each of these represent the equivalent of 2 bases and 2 to 4 deep from Maximus. So basically, it's like you took your giant game and you shrunk it down, so the big tug that you're fighting with is now just a very small tug. Armies vary hugely in their tug-sug mix. A Roman army might have no sugs at all. A Parthian army might have only 4 tugs of fully armored cataphracts, but a dozen sugs. Used well, sugs can harass and slow an opponent, but they rarely win the battle. In MeG, they do this through their shooting rather than just being there. You have to fight with the main battle troops to win the battle. When using a Parthian army, you'll have to soften the opponent up and then use your cataphracts carefully to break them, as you cannot afford to lose them. With a Roman army, you need to maneuver well and then strike hard and fast with your legionaries. Each army has their own strategy and tactics that you would pretty much have to, if you do enough research, you'll be able to figure out what that is. Because it doesn't explain any of that in here. Defeating the enemy. We measure the attrition damage and reduced fighting ability of each UG by reducing its number of bases, and by carrying a 1/2 base of damage termed a wound for simplicity. Okay, so the tokens here with the, if that is a wound, right, the little man laying on the ground, if he is a wound, you'll never need more than one of these behind your tug because it's half a base. And if you were to get 2, that would be a full base lost. That's what I'm gathering so far. Bullet point. Destroy more than half of the bases of a tug and it breaks and run away. So a tug of 8 bases will break and run away when it loses more than its 4th base. So not half, but more than half. So its fighting capability will have been dropped with each previous base lost. Okay, so bases affect your fighting abilities. In a SUG, it says destroy more than 1/3 of the bases of a SUG, and it disperses and runs away. So a typical foot Maximus SUG of 9 bases will break when it loses more than its 3rd base. So it's easier to destroy SUGs because it only takes 1/3 and not 1/2. Third bullet point. Destroy half of an army's tugs and the enemy army breaks. Okay, this doesn't say more than 1/2. It says destroy 1/2 of the army's tugs and the enemy army breaks, and you get a triumph. As a result, you cannot win a battle just by killing SUGs. You have to destroy the opposition's main battle troops. SUGs have no impact on the army breaking. That requires tugs. All 3 variants of the game follow these same principles. So in Pacto, a 1 base UG breaks on its 2nd wound. Well, that's because you destroyed the base, right? Okay, right, because you can't get more than half with 1 base. You get 1 wound, that's half the base. That's not more than half. So obviously it's 2. Okay, I'm following. A 2 base UG breaks on its 3rd wound because 2 wounds will remove 1 base it's still at 1/2, and then its third wound is more than half, it's destroyed. Okay, so it's not bases, but wounds. A 3-base UG breaks on its 4th, because that would be 2 bases, which is more than half. In all 3 cases, that is over 1/2. The same principles apply in all 3 variants. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's not really bases, it's wounds. And if you count each base as having 2 wounds, play with any basing system. One of the great pains for wargamers is to have to rebase their figures. When a new set rule emerges so that I have aimed to accommodate current basing conventions as much as possible. Yeah, that's where I'm saying if you've got a Field of Glory army and it's already based up, ready to go, it'll work with these rules. Everything is measured in base widths. So once you've decided what your base width is going to be in your game, that will determine what all the ranges, movement, and shooting is going to be. So you can play with any basing system as long as both sides are using the same basing system. You can play with individual figures if you want and treat them as 2, 3, 4 figure frontage. I've made a slight change to, or I'm using the Field of Glory basing system. So that's the basing system that I'm personally using, and that's the one throughout this boot camp I'll be showing. But when we get to basing, I'll explain all that as well, because basing is its own chapter. Fast and Furious. MeG is designed to be played at a fast pace. The preamble phase of the battle has all the grand tactical options you need, and they are resolved quickly. So you usually be in action within 10 minutes of moving your first troops. So usually you'll move and you'll be in combat. The game is designed to be fast moving and bloody. And like most battles, even as the victor, you will usually have suffered losses. Hence the strap line, nobody gets out unscathed. Subtle and rich in skill. So the core command mechanisms are simple, but allow a great deal of finesse within the game. As you play, you will increasingly see the wide spectrum of choices you have as an army commander, and how vital your decisions become. The role you give your generals at the beginning of the game is as critical as it is in reality. You also have considerable flexibility on how you design your army, using either the army builder or the army lists. Skirmishers in their rightful role. Skirmishers played a key role in the ancient world. You'll find that they have their own feel and effect, but they rarely dictate the battle's flow. As mentioned, you cannot break an army by destroying skirmishers. You have to break half of your opponent's tugs. Skirmishers do not hold up enemy troops simply by being there. Instead, they shoot, causing them to stumble or hide behind their shields. We call this concept the slowing effect. It's a unique concept in these rules. Okay, so I look forward to getting into the skirmishers. Skirmishers in MeG therefore end up with the role of harassing and wearing down enemy or holding terrain and shielding your own army. Rarely do they dominate the field. Only armies that were by their strategic nature skirmisher-based make them a primary aggressive force. Armies such as Numidian, Hun, Mongol, and Parthians. Leading your troops. You have a wide range of tactical choices to make up as an army commander. Armies are managed using the Mortem et Gloriam CCC system. This has cards and discs, which come in 5 colors: black, white, green, yellow, and red. The cards are best when learning, and the discs later once experienced. And both have their reverse sides printed to match the battle map to keep the table looking good at all times. Yeah, if you notice, the back of the cards has grass and the back of the counters all have grass as well. Throughout the rules, we will use cards as a general term for whether color command device you are using. Okay, so tokens can be used instead of the cards. Okay, that's good. See, I didn't know, but now that's good to know. There are 8 black, 12 white, 14 green, 10 yellow, 6 red in each deck. Looks like it's the same there. Red is the best and black is the worst. Red will allow sophisticated moves where black generally nothing at all. This one is purple. So, and it says ambush. There's another one right here that says flank march. Okay, we'll get into that. Better generals get more cards. So if you choose to be Alexander the Great, who is a legendary general, you get 5 cards. If you are playing Darius, a mediocre general, you get 2 cards. So different generals have different capacities to command. The final twist in the movement part of the game is that there are 3 types of main battle troops. 4 if we add skirmishers. You have drilled, formed, and tribal. Drilled troops find it easy to do things, so rarely need better than a green. Tribal troops find all but the basics more difficult, and some things impossible, and will often need yellow or red to do sophisticated things. I'm going to have to figure out what the level... It looks like it goes red, yellow, green, white, and then black. There's a rich variety of different moves to choose from in the game. The cards are used to pay for these. Overall, more cards and better colors will always be a good thing. The cards are colored and also numbered, like this one says 1. For anyone with poor color vision. Okay, so they're numbered based on their color quality. So red is a 4, yellow is a 3, green is a 2, white is a 1, and black is a 0. Okay, perfect. So I don't even have to look it up. I'll see it on the card with the numbers. Our new ones have a backing that matches our battle maps to improve the look of the game. There's also 5 special cards for flank marches and ambushes. That's this guy. Okay, the cards are played alternately. You can play a card to prompt an action, then your opponent does the same, and so on. This creates a system of movement that is interwoven, rather than a I move, you move. Okay, so I play a card, move a unit, you play a card, move a unit, and we go back and forth until I guess we're all out of cards. You will find there is an ebb and flow of actions and counters occurring continuously. Talented generals with drilled troops can react more easily to an opponent's actions than mediocre generals with tribal troops. You'll also find yourself playing your cards in different phases of the game. So perform tasks during fighting and after fighting as well as movement. There is simply no such thing as my go. Both players are involved all the time. And I guess we'll learn more about that as we progress. Just like playing cards. Okay, we got ambush 1, ambush 2, ambush 3, and then we got left and right flank. And then you can see the black is 0. white is 1. Green is 2, and that should be the majority of the cards are green. Yellow is 3. And there's only 6 red cards. And my understanding is both players work out of the same deck. So you're not going to get a whole lot of red cards. Alright, well that's it. Now in the next video we'll talk about basing figures. It's figures, bases, units, and armies. So we'll talk about basing figures, what the differences are, how to set up your tugs and sugs, the various differences between Magna, Maximus, and Pacto, which we kind of briefly went over already. We'll talk about generals, troop variety, classifications like troop types, troop quality, special abilities, training and formations, weaponry, mounted combat weaponry, foot combat weaponry, missile weaponry, armor, special characteristics like shield cover or fanatic, how to represent flexibles, and how to complete your army. So yeah, that's quite a big chapter. That'll be in the next video, and I look forward to it, and I'll see you next time.